everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our product session, What's New at VisibleThread. We're going to give you a product update and let you know what's coming and what you can expect in the platform in our updates coming at the beginning of the year and then over the next subsequent several months. Thank you again for joining us for this session, but again, thank you for all of those folks. I see some folks on our attendee list who have joined several of our sessions. We really appreciate you participating in Optimize and hope that you have got a ton of value out of the sessions throughout the process. So today you are joined, if you've been on some of the other sessions, you may recognize me. I've been kind of a frequent flyer here, but I am Allison Ritz. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at VisibleThread, and I am joined by Fergal McGovern, who is our founder and Chief Product Officer. So I will be starting off talking a little bit about the updates in the platform, talking a little bit about the proposal lifecycle and how we are following that and grounding the decisions that we're making in the new VisibleThread platform in your processes. And then I'm going to pass over to Fergal, and he is going to go through our 3 pillars. And then what you're all here for, jump into a live demo of the new platform. So give you kind of a first look at what you can expect in our upcoming release and some of the programs we have running. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and talk about the bid and proposal lifecycle. So before I get there, I just want to kind of cover out our approach. So VisibleThread, for over 15 years, we have been working with folks in the government contracting space. We have developed long and deep relationships with some of our customers and really have worked to understand not only the space and what it demands, but what are the pain points of bid and proposal professionals. So what are the things that you are facing every day? Where are the biggest slowdowns in your process? And how can we develop platforms that really make a difference in your workflow and your productivity? So to make those decisions, we are not just, basing it on what we assume. We're grounding this in the proposal lifecycle and grounding this in the processes that you're doing today. So when we look at the bid and proposal lifecycle, and I know everybody's looks a little bit different. So everybody is working with some version of a Shipley modified process, a gate review process. But what you see here is a standard kind of fairly simplified gate review process. So everybody's working with something that's got a foundation a little bit like this. So we've broken this into kind of 4 phases, and we think about the different processes involved within and the decisions and analysis that you need to do in order to advance an opportunity or make decisions to not bid an opportunity. So when we first look at opportunity assessment and capture, this is where we're talking about identifying opportunities and assessing the level of fit for your organization. So here we want to make sure that we are identifying opportunities that are the best fit for our business, the best fit for our capabilities, and then work into the analysis. So do we align from a technical perspective? Is this something that aligns with our core business values and something that we want to pursue? Is this something that follows our roadmap and our overall goals moving forward from an opportunity and pipeline perspective? So in this process, folks are identifying opportunities, scoring for best fit, whatever that looks like, whether you're using a platform today, whether you're using any digital assistance, whether that is an good old-fashioned scorecard or gut instinct so often. But is this something that fits with what we want to pursue? And then do we have the past performance to support? So ultimately, what's the qualifying performance? Do we have it? Have we performed well in those areas? And are we making those decisions with data and not just with our feeling? So the VisibleThread platform will help you to do those things. So help you to identify and analyze opportunities directly within the platform. So source opportunities, analyze them, and score easily for best fit and identify appropriate past performance. So we want to make sure that you're bidding on the most relevant and winnable contracts and give you the data for that gate justification. And then, of course, as always, reducing time to action while increasing your level of analysis. So moving on in that process, we are talking about, we have more information. We've decided that this is a good fit for our organization. So we really need to look at our, draft documents, our actual solicitation documents. Is what we're seeing now lining up with what we expected? What is our approach? So from a strategic perspective, pricing, delivery, what is our potential solution going to look like? And how do we stack up within the industry? So what we can do with the VisibleThread platform is to help you quickly and accurately assess risk. So are we sourcing any risk quickly? Do we need to pivot, or do we need to no bid this opportunity? Or is this something that will help us from a differentiating perspective? Analyze your potential competitor strategies. So who do you expect to be on this? What do you think their approach will be? And how can we dive into that a bit deeper and make that a part of our overall decision and assessment? And then create those initial outlines, first draft content, and executive summaries that are always grounded in your data, but to help you to get off the blank page and work through strategy sessions more efficiently. So moving on here to our proposal section. So this is where we're going to do the bulk of our content creation review process, multitude of updated compliance matrices, manage changes and the opportunity as it advances and develops. So we want to make sure here that we're assisting with those compliance matrices, with creating content that is grounded in your data and verifiable, handling amendments, handling those contractual and risk reviews with 100% accuracy. So here, you have the ability to leverage the platform in ways to gain efficiencies, as well as to make sure that we're ensuring quality and consistency in what we're delivering every time. And then from a post-submittal perspective. So here, we're talking about the section where we may be doing orals, where we may be doing best and finals, we may be working through the end of the process, but then there is that critically important after phase where we really need to dig into lessons learned and understand what we did well, what we didn't do well, and how can we either adjust this approach moving forward, or how is this something that we want to model? So the platform helps you to facilitate those final reviews and make sure that your offering is not only compliant, but it is high quality and competitive. Review for gaps, inconsistencies, and make sure that your win themes are consistent throughout. So make sure that final product is something that is going to get you the best result. And then support that lessons learned assessment with analysis and help you to categorize some of those contracts or past performance pieces for alignment in future pursuits. So ultimately, with the new platform, we're looking to support you from end to end and apply tech correctly where it matters. So we're in areas where we need to be 100% accurate, we're really going to dig into that and leverage the technology that's appropriate. And in areas where we can appropriately leverage Gen AI to create content and run assessments and run competitive scenarios and do idea generation, create outlines, we are going to leverage that technology where it comes in as well. So we put a ton of thought into our approach from a tech perspective, a ton of thought into how we are approaching the workflows within the platform. And all of that is coming from the experience and the longstanding relationships that we have in the industry and understanding what your real problems are and how we can make the biggest impact. So stopping there, I'm going to actually hand over to Fergal, and he's going to talk about our 3 pillars and then jump in to give you a live demo of what we're working on.
Hey, thanks so much, Alison. That is great, and appreciate the kind of context set. So to reiterate Alison's point, what the new VisibleThread is about is full lifecycle RFP intelligence, which is kind of sounds a bit lofty, but fundamentally it's delivering automation, whether it's generative AI based or whether it's logic based, because there's 2 different types of software. We ultimately want to, in some ways forget the technology, but actually look at the problems we're trying to solve. So this full life cycle thing, it'll become very obvious when I actually show you the real demo. But basically, it's more clearly addressing the sales side of the cycle, the proposal side of the cycle, the contract side, the solutioning side, the delivery side. So that's kind of point number 1. So you'll see a very clear progression. I'm looking at the attendee list. I've seen quite a few existing customers. There's probably some people who are not customers today on the session, but for those customers, think about this as almost a combination of VT Docs and VT Writer, or existing products, in a very clear way, mapping to a lifecycle. It'll become very obvious when I show you the actual real deal. The second thing that's super important here is AI. I've been writing a newsletter for the last two plus years, and really the purpose of that newsletter and the purpose of a lot of my executive briefings that I'm doing with a lot of our serious customers is really to help them understand AI itself. AI is a probabilistic based technology. It is not a 100% accurate, 100% repeatable technology. It's predictive. So if you're looking for 100% repeatability, so let's say you're looking in a contract and you're looking for the indemnification clauses. Well, in Word today, you crank that open, you use Control F, or perhaps you do search in PDF. If there's 23 occurrences of indemnification, you expect that to appear today if I run it against one doc, and next week if I run it against one doc. If, on the other hand, I use generative AI to do that job, I will get variable answers. Maybe today I might get 7. Next week I might get 5. It's hard to believe, but that is the nature of generative AI. So it's very important that vendors like us combine generative AI and logical software in a way that makes sense for you. And in fact, if you think about Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, most of that software is not generative AI. And then, of course, if you're using something like Copilot, that's the Gen AI bit. So irrespective of how Microsoft do it, we have the same objective as a vendor. We want to make sure that when we use generative AI, we show full, what we call traceability to the justification for why the answer comes back the way it does. And I'll make this very clear in a moment when we see this. It's a huge value of ours, that traceability, that ability for you as a human to actually trust but verify where the answers are coming, makes a ton of sense. So for instance, if we use sources that we want to ground the Gen AI, so we're creating a management plan, for instance, I want to point at my best quality content and make sure that I have a cited paragraph citing relevant content. So this is a way of grounding generative AI. It's a traceability, if you will. The third and final thing has never changed for us. When I founded this company over 15 years ago, we were always about security. There are tons of vendors out there right now who are actually relatively newish in the space. Security is not a compromisable area. So we deploy frequently on-premise, meaning it's basically literally everything is behind your firewall, meaning no data goes out. That's super important if you're in defense and space, any regulated sectors. SCIFs, for instance, highly secure classified information. CUI, controlled but unclassified information. CMMC2 is coming right at most people as well. We need to be CMMC2 certified, or you do, because if you're dealing with primes, or indeed if you're priming, that's what the government is demanding. And of course, as we know, there is a requirement. So please, as you're looking at any vendor, ourselves included, make sure you front load your security checks, because the worst thing you can do is use a product that is fantastic, looks great, it fits the bill from a functional standpoint, but it falls towards the end at the security hurdle. I was on a call earlier actually with a prospect, actually, as it turns out, and we're making this point. It's a little like you yourselves. When you're pursuing when you're pursuing an opportunity, let's use variable language here, you would never leave important compliance checks towards the end of the proposal lifecycle. You would always front load those so that if it's a no bid, you know that you're going to no bid very soon, as opposed to wait. It's the same thing when you choose tools and products. Front load your most important question, which right now is probably security. Is the vendor producing or using AI in a way that will satisfy the requirements that we have from a CMMC certification standpoint, as well as from a security posture standpoint? I'm happy to say that VisibleThread does, but not all vendors will do that. Okay, good. Let us move on, and now I'm going to get to what's coming. So again, directing my comments towards those who may be familiar already with VisibleThread, today we have 2 products, VT Docs, VT Writer. The future VisibleThread is an amalgamated offering. We will also keep VT Writer as a separate offering, as a lighter weight offering for those needing to create and edit AI-generated content. So that's typically possibly your solution architects. It's probably your subject matter experts. They don't need to be able to shred docs, but they certainly need to be able to contribute content to the overall proposal. So they will still continue to use VT Writer, and the VisibleThread platform is for BD, capture, proposals, contracts, and program delivery. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm new to this platform, so hopefully it will work. Let me share my screen, and I will find the appropriate tab. Excellent. So this will take a couple of seconds to show. I am hoping, and Alison, you might just confirm that you can see my screen in the audience view.
Yes, I can.
Fabulous. Thanks so much. So hopefully everybody can see this. So this is the opening area for the VisibleThread platform. And you'll probably see quite a different complexion on the left-hand side. Anybody who's used VT Docs will see a little area called folders here. This is all the existing functionality you have today in VT Docs. However, what we're doing now is we're actually more aligning the left-hand sidebar to the lifecycle. So the very first part of the lifecycle tends to be searching for good quality opportunities. So I'm going to click on that. When I click on that, you'll see that there's a populated list of opportunities. This happens to be a scrape from sam.gov, which, as you all know, is the area where the government will publish many of the opportunities available. And you'll see fairly classical things. Many of you today in sales and BD and capture are probably using something like Delta, GovCon IQ, and various other competitive intelligence products. This is to some extent overlapping a little. I wouldn't suggest it's the full-blown thing, but it's a good starting point. So you'll probably continue using some of those other products as well. I'll draw your attention to this column called business alignment. Now, what is that when it's at home? Let me just click on that and I'll sort it. So the 30,000 odd opportunities that you see up here, I'm looking for the most aligned opportunities according to my business profile. So I'll just click into one of these guys, maybe the kind of F25 one here. I see that looks quite nice. I'll click into that. I'm going into the detail for that. By the way, what you see here, since it's an ingestion from sam.gov, it's literally just the details from SAM. You can always click on that and get to the record itself. But I now look at business alignment as a tab. So why this is scoring 80 out of 100 is because our organization's profile prefers these agencies, Department of Defense, GSA, Department of Energy, and so forth. We like these NAICS codes. The NAICS code on this opportunity is matching that. There's nothing magic here. This is just literally just kind of searching and making sure that there's alignment. The product and service code is not matching, but not a big deal. The contract type is a pre-solicitation. This one here is in fact a BAA, so a broad agency call out. It's pre kind of RFP. And the set aside is none, and we said none is okay as well as set aside. So we're all good, okay? That's what's going on here when you actually get business alignment. So sorting this is a very simple thing. It's nicely usable. You can kind of quickly start to see opportunities that are useful. Another way of slicing opportunities is by using a search. So here I've got this predefined search. I actually created this earlier called IT services. So I'll just click on that. We're now filtering out the opportunities to match these NAICS codes. So show me anything with 541511 or anything with 54113, etc. You can define these are free form. Commas separate the value, so it's one of these four. Our notice type is solicitation and three others. In this case, it's combined synopsis solicitation, pre-solicitation. So again, you can define as many searches as you need, and we will store those. You can also add filters. So I could define a search and update this search if I wish. I'm going to click on another search, research opportunities, slightly different. The NAICS code are a little bit different. The notice type is the same, but now I'm looking and including set-asides. And I'm saying no set-aside use, fine. Agencies, same kind of thing. So you can create as many of these as you need. It's just quality of life stuff. So as you see, here's my FY25 Naval Aircraft or Air Warfare Center. If I find something interesting, I can now move on to the next stage. And the next stage is tracking that opportunity, because we don't want to certainly wade through 30,000 opportunities every time. I'm going to track this. And when I track the opportunity, you see the confirmation message here, it goes into this area called tracked opportunities. So these are a subset, if you will, excuse me, of the opportunities. And if I now see the bottom one here, it says F-25 Naval Air Warfare Center. That's great. It's a BAA. So I'll drill into detail. Now, this is a tracked opportunity, so it's got a little bit more oomph in it. So now we're drilling into the detail of the tracked opportunity. And now you'll see this kind of sub menu here. These are the general details. We saw these a moment ago. This is the documents. So in this case, it's only one document. It's literally a BAA. The business alignment is here for reference. So that's what we saw a moment ago as well, where there's 4 out of 5 matching. That's cool. Now let's get to a different way of slicing this. Alison alluded to the idea of kind of past performance a moment ago. Let's see how that looks. We call that technical alignment. So I'm just going to pause. So when I click technical alignment here, what we're actually doing underneath the covers is that we're using a combination of technologies. We are certainly using generative AI, and we're also using logic to ground the AI. But effectively, you don't have to worry about that detail. But what's interesting here is that if you see down on the left-hand side, these are an automatic distillation of the requirements in that BAA. So it's looking for these things. So for instance, if I move down, it's looking for cyber, it's looking for quantum in the research areas, it's looking for aeromechanics, it's looking for autonomy. So I'm hoping that's beginning to make sense. So that whole area there, that's automatically built. You don't build that. It's a way of almost crystallizing the content. We're doing something special here. We're also making sure that there's no hallucinations. So those occurrences, 5 occurrences of cyber, are actually occurring within the requirements doc. So think about it as a summary, if you will. Anybody who's a user of VT Docs today might be familiar with our discovery capability. It's kind of a variation on that, except we're using generative AI here. What's on the right-hand side? Let's just collapse this and I'll explain the right-hand side. These are past performance contracts. These are contracts that we have set up in the system. They're stored in this contracts area. And underpinning each of these is 1 or more documents. So we're then doing a second step. We're checking to see which of the contracts match with the requirements here. And if I go back to my research example here, let's just expand that. We did talk about support equipment before. We did talk about human systems before, 6 times. So now I can go deeper into this. I can say, well, and you may think 4% isn't very high, but actually, it might be actually relative to the rest of our past performance, it's the highest. So that's not bad. And of course, these are making up contracts, so your alignment will be much better, I would expect. Now I'm going to click into the detail just to do the trust but verify step. So let's see what's driving this. This is Gen AI meets 100% accuracy. I click on this. Now what am I seeing? Okay, I am seeing the list of requirements on the left-hand side within the BAA document that we're evaluating for fit. And you'll see there's lots of gray. There's no matching for any of these electronic submission areas. There's no matches for cost accounting references. We didn't mention any gap requirements in our docs or in this doc. So that would suggest maybe we should pause on this. But what's the positives? The positives are that basically if we look at the research area and I check that, I can now do a double check on exactly the content in our particular created doc, which you see on the right. So this is our past performance, and I can see that support equipment, as I click on it, is actually within our document. So it helps you narrow down and trust but verify the alignment question. So alignment here is super important, and we see this as being really important. Front load this step. Make sure that you're doing this just like I suggested on, if you're evaluating any automation front load security checking, front load this step, and you will avoid spending money in the wrong places, and you'll make sure that you need to have a partner strategy that may offset some of the areas of deficit. So again, to reframe this, I've jumped into the specific doc associated with the specific contract. If I go back up a level, I was in this area, and overall what I'm doing is a cross-reference across all of these docs. Hopefully in your case, when you're running this, you'll see a lot more than 4%. And if you don't, you really need to think long and hard, should we even pursue this? That's alignment, that's technical alignment. What else happens in the context of BD? And I'll just give you a quick sense of some of the other steps here. There's this node called research. Research is interesting because it allows us to start to create notes or create kind of basic parts of what will ultimately become a capture plan. So here's create new file. I'm creating a file. This may start to look familiar. This looks, and I hope it looks to you like an editor. That's exactly what it is. The right-hand side, however, is actually a collection of prompt shortcuts. I like this because I'm kind of lazy and I like somebody else to do the great prompting, or at least to develop the prompts. And most organizations tend to have, 1, 2, 4 people or more who get really good at the art form called prompting. Alison is one of our people internally here. She did a brilliant session yesterday about the art of prompting, and there's various patterns and approaches. So my competitor SWOT might well have come from Alison. So when I click on this, it's basically saying, please provide a competitor matchup chart and a SWOT analysis on these firms. And you can see this kind of fill in the blanks type stuff. So you can configure these, expose them to all the people in this platform, and actually also put fill in the blanks type stuff, which is basically this shading, this lilac. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to copy this thing very quickly. I'm going to paste it in here. So rather than the PMA 209 program, I'm going to replace that. It's just free-form text. Just get you off the blank page faster. And I'm going to put hypothetically in here Lockheed Martin. I'll put in, who else will we put in? I'll put in CSCI. Just again, this is not in any way suggestive that those guys are doing this, but just as an example. And let's say L3 Harris. Okay, cool. So I'm going to let that rip. To be clear, this is using the training of the large language model. To be super clear, most of our customers who are deployed behind the firewall, meaning they're 100% secure, are integrated with their preferred large language model, and we will support all the major large language models. So I'm going to let that run. Now what's happening? It's coming back and getting me off the blank page faster. Keep in mind, it's generative AI generated stuff. So that revenue number for Lockheed is 65 billion. That's a makey up thing. You need to trust but verify this stuff. This is AI. Don't trust any of it. Make sure you read it. But the key point is that I'm starting from at least a position of some merit at this point. Because actually asking you to create a SWOT analysis, I'm probably going to get a pretty decent, at least outline of a SWOT. And I will insert it here. And you'll see at the very top, we have a pretty nice table. All of that is editable. I can kind of start moving things. I can start adding stuff. So it's a full-blown editor as you're used to. Of course, the other element of this, and we don't have time today to share this, but basically we also have an add-in into Microsoft Word where you can do exactly the same type of thing. And that will be coming in the first quarter of 2026. So that's pretty cool as well. So I would name that doc. I'd probably call it SWOT. I'd probably save it and kind of cruise on. And then you can build as many of these as you need. So it's basically, think about it as almost a research scratchpad. Okay, excellent. So far, so good. Let's assume now between the technical alignment, the business alignment, the research we're doing, we're getting into nice shape here. We're kind of thinking, yeah, we're actually, we're going to pull the trigger and we'll start the proposal on this. Now, in this case, since this is a BAA, starting a proposal, I'll just leave without saving this stuff, would effectively mean that I'm writing a white paper or I'm trying to influence. So I'm going to, do that. So I will click on the start proposal option here. We're now moving into a different phase. Notice that that F-25 naval air warfare thing is here. It's in a Kanban board. Nothing crazy about this. This is just a way to elegantly manage your kind of, in-flight stuff. You can customize the phases you have here. That's no problem. But now we're going into the detail of this F-25 thing. So I will click on that. And now we have a slightly different set of options here, but it's basically the same idea. You can see the document. Here's the document we're working on. If we added any more documents up on the kind of opportunity side of things, they would show here as well. And that's useful because proposal people can start to see the insights, the research insights directly here without having to kind of necessarily go chase. And that's important. Of course, the best shops have good collaboration between your proposal folks and capture and BD and kind of some element of overlap, particularly on more strategic pursuits. What else will we see here? Of course, shredding is a big part of today's value proposition for VisibleThread. So let's see how we're evolving our shredding capability. I'm going to go to shredding on this. For any existing customers, this will look a little bit new. We can name a shred, that's new. So let's call this legal or compliance shred. Typically, of course, most proposal people do a will, shall, must shred, but I can do that in a moment. But let's do a legal compliance shred. What's the document? Well, there's only one document here, that's it. This is a way now to say, well, what terms or phrases should we use to actually do that shred? And you'll notice something here. These are tags. You can start to categorize your various search dictionaries. For instance, the var defar extractor. I might use that. In fact, I'll probably use it more upfront during the kind of tracked opportunity phase. But let's say for the sake of argument, I want to use that. Or in this case, since it's a BAA, I probably wouldn't use that. Let's look at the contract terms review. There's things like licenses and, you know, restrictions, etc. So I'm going to run the shred. And what you'll see in a moment is basically a very similar thing to what we saw a moment ago. Now we're seeing the fixed search dictionaries that we're looking for. We are seeing exactly the occurrence of these terms. You see where I see liability and indeed anything matching liability. So it could be liability, liabilities, you know, indemnifications, all that stuff. And as I click on this, you'll see on the far right-hand side in the high fidelity viewer, we're also flagging it there. So it becomes super easy to actually do a good review. And of course, as anybody who's using VT-Docs today knows, we're very strong on exports to Excel. That still is here. And you're also able to now mark up and make comments on these areas. This isn't in this version that I'm currently showing, but the ability to add comments directly within the solution is super important. The final piece that is important is that as we run these shreds, we are also preserving a history. This again is new for any VT-Docs users today. We don't preserve a history. We have, you know, we bang it out into Excel and then you're in Excel, which is fantastic. But this is very useful because it gives you an ability to actually look at the audit of all shreds. So for example, let's say this shred was a VT contracts terms shred. It was looking at legal and compliance considerations. Perhaps my next shred should be a will, shall, must. Let's just call this. So depending on who's running the shred, you will name it appropriately. So here's a will, shall, must. Same document. I'll see if I can find a nice will, shall, must dictionary. There we go. And you can see it's even categorized as a will, shall dictionary. So that's kind of cool. Now I'll run that. Same document, utterly different set of terms. Very easy to find all your will, shalls, and musts. So I hope you can see the power of this idea, this combination of the doc with the dictionary, with the idea of being able to mark up directly in here, and the idea of actually the audit trail. So again, coming back here, I've just done 2 shreds in a row. Now I can come back. Now I can see, you know, Alison can come in as a colleague and she can see, well, further on this shred, that's great. He's got some markup in there. That's super good. Now I can actually have a reliable audit trail of everything. So shredding has always been a big strength of VisibleThread. This brings it to a next level. The final area I want to share with you is the idea of amendment handling and writing. So when I think about writing, let's go to writing initially, and I'll kind of speak towards that. This writing and editing area, that is an area of typically, you know, when you get your outline, and we can, we'll skip the outline for the moment, but basically that's a Gen AI generated outline. For each section, you'll start to build out a document, if you will, which in this case, let's call this section 1. And this is going to be, you see there's different shortcuts over here. You can configure this to have different shortcuts showing at a different time. So let's call this, in fact, let's not call it, let's call it the BAA response B1. That's all cool. I'm going to use a shortcut. I'll not call it RFI, I'll call it a BAA response. The agency name, let's assume it's the DoD, or it's actually Navy, isn't it? Called agency. Okay, that's all good. And I'll skip the rest of it and I'll just let it do its stuff here. So I'm just going to let it rip. Again, the idea of using these shortcuts and getting off the blank page fast is really the big deal here. And now we're using classic generative AI to build out a good quality initial starting point. Caveat emptor, always check what comes back from AI. Don't believe it, you have to check it. And when the effort to check it gets over the effort to generate it, then you've got a problem. But in general, this stuff is really good. It kind of gets us going, particularly in a context like this. The other thing that I'm not demoing here that is in play is the ability to ground your answers in good quality content. So if I'm doing a BAA like this, again, this is a business associate. See, already it's hallucinating. It thought a BAA was business associate agreement. So now I need to go back and reprompt this and actually force it to understand the BAA is a broad agency agreement, not a business associate agreement. So this is classic AI. So I hope you're kind of getting this sense of how to use this. But if we're grounding these answers in good quality content, possibly living in SharePoint, we can use a concept called collections to ground the answer in the best possible previous BAAs for this customer. Again, if you're doing a lot of fast turn stuff or a lot of kind of early stage BD stuff, that's a classic of what you would do. So I hope that makes sense in terms of writing and editing. You can do as much writing as you need. The next thing that typically happens is that people will say, well, what happens if we've got change? How do you handle amendments? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different opportunity, which I know has a couple of revisions, which is Shield. This is, again, many people on this call, I suspect, were chasing Shield. Many people possibly not, particularly if you're in non-defense and space. But Shield, just to set context, is 150 billion estimated IDIQ. The due date was actually 16th of October, so it's a couple of weeks ago. And it did have a draft and a final. Now, the differences weren't particularly interesting or that material, as it turns out, but I'm going to go to amendment handling. How do you handle amendments if you're writing against an initial proposal, or there's a different revision that comes out? How do we know what material changes have happened? So today in VT Docs, that's called Doc Compare. With the new VisibleThread platform, it's called amendment handling. So what, you might ask? Well, the answer is because we're now going to choose the original file, the final file. These are real. But now, just like before, we're going to name the report. So the report here is going to be, let's call it Shield draft. Excuse me, if I could spell it would be helpful. Draft versus final. And because I know I've probably done this before, I'm going to put in a 2 here, just to guarantee uniqueness in all my history, because we are preserving all these compares. Now what you get is a little bit more evolved than what you're used to. We're going to show the full report directly within VisibleThread. That has several advantages. Once the report runs, this is happening in real time, by the way. Just to explain the layout of the land here, this is a comparison between the original document showing on the left, the final document showing on the right. You can see a lot of identical stuff. So I'm going to kind of jump in here and page down. You can also, by the way, filter. See this filter stuff? Eliminate all the identical stuff. There's 3,664 rows there. But basically I'm paging down, and as we start to see modifications, you'll see it here. Of course, the created on modification is very non-consequential, so I'll ignore that. Don't really care about that. So we're starting to do our markup here. Perhaps the AC13 product service code add is of some note, medium. Let's chat to solutioning. Again, that would be maybe subject matter expert, whoever it is on this. We're adding comments. So now you're beginning to build up a review cycle where the data is here and you can always come back to the data. So as I page down here, I'm just skimming through the thing. It's the same advantage of what you have today in Excel when we do dot compare. The difference here is that we're storing all the state. We're making sure that you have a way to go back to it and your comments are more directly accessible to you. This is important because this is a multi-user tool. So anybody, Alison can see my comments, I can see hers, and I can mark the review as complete. And once I mark the review as complete, then that shows out here under status rather than in progress. It's now complete. So you're basically allowing a very simple and easy way to track these changes and track impact to the proposal as you write it. I'm going to leave it at that because I think I've probably given you enough of a sense of kind of the direction of travel of where we're going with VisibleThread. There is a lot more, but more to come, and we'll certainly be happy to share that stuff in the next month or 2 months. Okay, so I will pass back to yourself, Alison, and we can kind of take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Fergal, so much for sharing. So I want to just kind of do a quick review of what is the true impact of VisibleThread in these spaces. So, Fergal talked about the 3 pillars in the front end. I want to just touch back on that and where can we help in these spots. So if we're talking about full lifecycle RFP intelligence, we are going to help you quickly identify opportunities and then assess risk, assess fit, assess adherence to requirements, making sure that you have proper alignment to past performance and you have the supporting qualifying performance, and do all of that within the platform that you can then advance the opportunity creation. Work through those streamlined workflows and opportunity management. So manage your proposal pipeline within the platform and quickly move on to drive action or make decisions as a result of the analysis, manage versions and amendments, and then continuously build that contract library to strengthen that upfront best fit analysis and strengthen your past performance reference material. Focusing on AI grounded in your data. So I talked a bit at the front, and I know Fergal mentioned it in the demo, really important to think about what technology we are using and applying for which specific job. So do we need to be 100% accurate, or is this something where we have more space to be creative? So helping you with generating first draft creation at multiple parts of the process, whether that's front end competitive assessment, whether that is when you get into the process generating actual proposal content, whether that is a market analysis, anything that you're doing there, we can help to generate content and get you off that blank page more quickly. And always ground that content in relevant hand-selected data. So I know Fergal mentioned in the demo that you can connect to SharePoint. So in that case, we are, creating proposal content. We can reference our past content. We can reference our past performance. We can reference, formatting to specific types of documents. We can cross-reference to requirements within the solicitations. So all of that can be done supported by collections and can give you traceable. So when we're seeing something pulled out, you're always going to have that reference bubble. So you can reference back to the document and make sure that you verify that this is accurate and then make adjustments if needed. And then we have, of course, those deterministic capabilities. So when we're going in, when we're leveraging dictionaries, that is a one-to-one search. So when we're looking for specific contractual requirements, when we are looking for specific clauses or something that is going to obligate us from a legal perspective, things that we can't have any margin of error on. So we see in the front, when we look at technical alignment, we see it's 80% or it's 75%, and that's pretty good. Well, if we're talking about adhering to contractual requirements, even 99% isn't good enough. So we really need those deterministic spaces in order to make sure that you're accurate when you need to be. And then from a security perspective, so we are built for GovCon and trusted by some of the world's most secure organizations with our upcoming GovCloud options, on-prem deployments. We have, a dozen plus years of experience deploying on-prem into secure environments, including SCIFs, including the most secure spaces. So our team has a combined decades of experience and can meet any organization's security needs. Ability to use any LLM. So we are LLM agnostic. So we will ship with an LLM if you don't have one. But if you have internal or proprietary LLMs, they can work within the VisibleThread interface, and you can point this system at the LLM that's going to be best suited for your work and the content that you want to create. And then I want to just touch on the end, our support and CS teams. again, combined ton of experience within the teams, supporting customers in these types of environments, understanding the needs within the GovCon landscape. So we have a lot of great experience on our team. They are incredibly involved in the process. This is not a kind of set it and forget it type of software. They are your advocates and they're your partners throughout your entire journey with VisibleThread. So it's not a situation where we're asking you to, if you're considering VisibleThread and if you enter into a relationship with us, that's how we view it, as a relationship and a partnership. So it's not, we don't want to sell you software. We really want to be a part of, transforming your bid and proposal process. So I will stop there again. Oh, go ahead, Fergal, if you want to add.
No, absolutely. Just two brief things. And again, just apologies on this, but to be clear, we actually don't ship any LLM. We integrate with LLMs, just to be clear. So in the highly secure area, that's not all good. Interestingly, I'm looking at a question from Dawn. Can you share an example of collections? And if time allows, I might actually go into live demo mode very briefly.
That's fine.
And show what collections look like, if that works. So there are a number of other good questions. If we don't get to those questions, we will follow up after this. But let me share my screen. And there's nothing like seeing it in the flesh to kind of see what it actually looks like. So I'm sharing Microsoft Word. And this is Microsoft Word. By the way, I've got Copilot here as well. Some of you may be using Copilot. This is how collections work. So this is our current VT Writer product, and this will be part of the overall VisibleThread platform. So I'm signing into this. By the way, that's single sign-on, meaning we're authenticating automatically. These are the prompt shortcuts. I hope you can kind of see that. So the shortcut, for instance, that I prefer to use always, because I use it a lot, and our DevOps people and our frontline support people use it a lot, is how do we do XXX? And really the XXX is, how do we do anything? So write an answer as to how VisibleThread handles security. I could change that to how VisibleThread handles encryption, or how VisibleThread handles anything. I could change it completely, make it clear, well structured and understandable. Now, if I let this go and run this against the large language model, I'll probably get quite a few hallucinations because it's using the training in the public domain. So what I'll do is I'll use a collection. So I click on Use Files. These are an ability. Collections are basically a set of files that you can choose from local files, or you can choose from SharePoint if you have a SharePoint repository. And in my case, this is our SharePoint repository, so I'm seeing my stuff, so I can choose files from here. And in the interest of kind of time, I'm going to show you some collections that I have personally. So here's a collection called Security Questionnaires. Since we want the AI to say, how does VisibleThread handle security? That's a really good collection. It's focused. We have 9 files in that. The 9 files are on the bottom here. You can see these are questionnaires. And what's really important is that it doesn't mean we only have 9 files. We have tens, if not hundreds, of questionnaires over the years. But these are good ones. These are recent and they're good. So that's important. So you can curate this collection and everybody in our system gets advantage of that. And why is that? Because I can share this collection. See the way I'm sharing it with our sales team and our customer success team? So they get this automatically. So it's single point of management. And that's super important when you've kind of got mucky data sets and you may want to only expose certain sets of good quality content. Now what we're doing is we're checking permissions. Since these are SharePoint collections, that's super important because permissions may have changed, or perhaps one of these files may have been updated. We want to pick that up automatically. So now I'm writing an answer as to how VisibleThread handles security. I'm basing it on a collection, and now I'm going to let that run against the AI. Now you'll notice, if you're eagle-eyed, when it comes back, it's going to start to cite references into the content that was in those 9 files. So here we go. So it's talking about incident management. See that little one there? I'll let it do its thing, and hopefully you can begin to see it. So this is now where we're not just saying, okay, LLM, large language model, knock yourself out, give me an answer. It's actually saying, LLM, please give me an answer, but absolutely base it on stuff that's in the collection. Don't make it up, don't hallucinate. And then, by the way, if you can't find something in the collection, tell me, say I can't find anything. And that's how this is built. So I'm going to resize my screen here. I'm going to click on access control. How does it know we do SAML to 0? access control, it got it from here. This is the source. You can see it here. How does it know that we've got annual training for all staff? It got it from here. So this is where you're grounding the AI with good quality content. I like to kind of say this: if you've got crappy data, bad quality content, and you're feeding it into AI, you're going to get crappy outcome. It's garbage in, garbage out. So these collections are a super important element of what we're doing within this side of generating content. The final bit about this, and that's really cool, is that I can insert this now into my Word and actually carry on my merry way with whatever formatting is going on, whatever template I would like to use. So this idea of the add-in is really important. This is part of today's VT Writer product. VT Writer is a super important product for people who don't need all the bells and whistles of shredding and amendment handling, but just want to kind of create great quality content. So both live together. The VisibleThread platform, which also will have this, but all the other stuff, and VT Writer is almost like for individuals who are writing quality content, perhaps you're subject matter experts, but they don't need all the rest of the stuff. So I wanted to share that. Let me just stop sharing that. I hope it makes sense. And Dawn, I hope it answers your question about collections.
Excellent. Thank you, Fergal. We have time for a couple questions, so I'm going to pull a couple, and we won't get to all of them, but we will make sure that we follow up with everybody after. So just a couple of questions. So the first one is, what needs to be done if I wanted to use VT in a SCIF to do a classified proposal?
I can take that one, Alison, if you wish. So basically so in the SCIF, obviously it's completely isolated. Just to be clear, VisibleThread has no access to any data. When you deploy what we call customer hosted, you can deploy into a SCIF. There are two types of customer hosted deployments. One might be using a private cloud. That is not a SCIF deployment. So in the SCIF deployment, typically you won't have access to SharePoint, or you may. So you typically in a customer hosted deployment in a SCIF, you're deploying onto actually a box like a Windows machine, or you're deploying onto a different type of operating system, for instance, Red Hat, which is a Unix type operating system. So the options are there. What you then need to do in order to have access to generative AI capability, that SCIF also needs to have a large language model. Again, your IT colleagues, it's really something that they will be on top of. Most people running AI within SCIFs are running open source models. Some of those models are things like Llama 4, for instance, Mistral. There's a number of very high-end, very good, competent open source models that your IT colleagues for sure will be all over this stuff. So what we encourage is front load that IT security conversation if that's what you're trying to do. But SCIFs are not unusual for us, and something that, despite my accent, I always make that joke, it's 100% in our comfort zone. Is something that we have a ton of experience around.
And I'll add to that, that's something that we can cover in a follow-on conversation. We'll be following up with everybody after the session. And if you want to have a follow-on conversation with folks from our sales and IT teams, they can walk through the process of who would need to be involved in your organization and give you an idea of what that would look like and some documentation to support that. Okay. So we're almost at time, but we have time for one more question. We did have a couple questions about the timing of the release. So what should people expect for a release date or general timeline of when they would have access to the new VisibleThread platform?
Sure. So the new VisibleThread environment will be available in our public cloud. So that would mean that not for customer hosted, but our public cloud that we run in January of 2026. So basically a couple of months away. We then will make the new VisibleThread available for customer hosted deployments in the early part of Q2. So you're looking at an April timeframe for that.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I know we're almost at the hour. We will have some folks jumping over to our next session. Will be the final session of the day. I'm going to go ahead and click forward. I should have a slide here for you. Yes. So our final session of the day is opportunity starts at the top, leadership, risk, and the bidding mindset. So excellent session. If you want to roll over onto that one, you'll be taken straight there. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to learn more about the VisibleThread platform and about some of the development that we're doing, please connect with us on LinkedIn or reach out directly through our contact us section on the website. But we will be following up with everybody with the recording of this section and some resources for you as well. On top of that, let me thank you for participating in Optimize and joining us. We really love putting on these events. And if you are interested in any of the other sessions, you can go in the console here. We'll link straight to the Optimize page on our website, and you can download all the recordings from yesterday's session as well as today's that likely will be tomorrow. So we'll have those up. But in short order, you'll be able to download all the sessions and see some of the information that was shared if you missed anything. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you Fergal for the demo and for being part of this session. And we are excited to connect with everybody post this, connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'd love to continue the conversation.
Thanks everyone, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.